Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra. As always, I'm joined... No, I've got it wrong again. I should know this. As always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, good evening.
Good evening, Andrew. How you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. I'm all right. I'm hopped up on Euro 2024 fever. Ooh! I just watched a Slovakian player get absolutely creamed out of it by a Belgian. Tielemans. So yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I watched a little bit of that game. The first half I was watching. And yeah, I can't get my head around Belgium. I feel like every tournament I sort of try to get excited about them and I look at their team and I think, yeah, they've got good players. And it just never quite materialises.
No, they were very, very bad in the first half. Very bad. You know all those stories linking us with Onana?
Yeah.
Can they stop now, please? Please?
Even the commentator mentioned it. I don't know if it was BBC or ITV, but they said Andre Onana and they... it's not Andre, is it? I've got that wrong.
Amadou.
Yeah, Amadou. Andre Onana's the goalkeeper. Plays for Manchester United. Anyway, they mentioned Arsenal as being, linked with Onana. But it is, as links go, a fairly spurious one.
Yeah.
I've even knocked it down publicly. I've taken that risk, which is always, I stand to be made a fool when Arsenal launch their deadline day bid for Amadou Onana. But I don't think they will.
Well, certainly not on the basis of his first half performance today. That's not going to be happening, no.
Well, how was Trossard getting on last you saw?
Well, he's just been taken off. And it's fair to say he didn't have a good game either. He had a chance early in the first half. There was an opportunity for him to try and lob it over the keeper who'd given the ball away in a ridiculous area. He could have played in Lukaku, but I think based on what we've seen from Lukaku in this game as well, I think the right decision was to try the hardest thing possible, and he kicked it over the bar. But he wasn't really very good. None of the Belgians were particularly good in that first half. They were better in the second half. There was an air of I don't think we really give a shit in this game. And Slovakia have been decent, defended pretty well, put their bodies on the line. There was a great clearance off the line a few minutes ago. And at the time of recording, there's sort of about 12 minutes of normal time left. And they're still leading 1-0. So
I suppose Belgium's sort of golden generation, as it were, is kind of at the end of its cycle, right? I mean, Eden Hazard's obviously no longer there. Thibaut Courtois
not there
with the squad, I believe. And then you've got people like De Bruyne, who's 32 now. Lukaku, who's probably past his best.
It's not golden anymore. I think it's brass, maybe?
Rusty. It's the rusty generation.
The rusty brass generation of Belgium. But yeah, that's ongoing. I mean, I've watched all the games. I thought the game earlier on this afternoon was great fun between Romania and Ukraine. I was looking at it in the fixture list, and I was going, Romania versus Ukraine. I mean, will I bother? And I bothered, and it was great fun. It was a really good game, and some good goals in this. I did want to ask. Something occurred to me watching that game, and it involved Mykhailo Mudryk. And, I think all of us have been very pleased and receptive to the transfer business that Arsenal have done over the last few years, right? That the positions we need to fill, we've filled, and we've brought in good players. But everything I've ever seen from Mudryk just makes me wonder, what were they thinking? What was it that they saw in him that nobody else has seen? Because, his first touch for a player who would have been expected to slot into a Mikel Arteta team, which is, for all the structure, for all the tactics and everything else, extremely technical. And he just does not have that technical ability. And I always remember Arsene Wenger saying something that once a player gets to about whatever age Mudryk is, or thereabouts, that it's really, really difficult to improve their technical level. like your technical level is sort of forged in the football you play as a kid and all that kind of, all the street footballers. This is why they can trap a football, because they were playing with a bunch of, orange skins, on the streets in whatever inner city that they came from, that kind of vibe. But
I think Arsene used to say the basic technique is forged by about the age of 8 years old.
Wow.
Something like that.
But yeah, Mudryk was very Mudryk in this game. And I was just trying to figure out, what was it? What was in the dossier? What was it they saw? But maybe it will just be one of those mysteries, one of life's great mysteries.
Yeah. I think as well, we have to remember, like, we think about him as the €100 million player. But actually, when Arsenal were first interested in him, his price tag was significantly lower than that.
That's right.
I think that summer even there was talk that he might be available for in the region of €30 million, and even heading into that January, I think Arsenal were thinking, well, we might pay 50, at a push.
Yeah.
And I guess for a player with kind of raw potential, who's a bit of a gamble, you can just about understand that. I think maybe the thing you can criticise Arsenal most for in the whole enterprise is that they got dragged into the bidding war with Chelsea, and that they were prepared to go as far as they were prepared to go. I mean, from everything we know, Arsenal they came up with an offer of their own that matched that 100 million, albeit, with a different payment schedule and different add-ons.
Sure.
But that, you could call it 100 million euros. And I think maybe that is the most extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
Is that Arsenal, they saw something in this player, but they were prepared to go quite that far. And I'm sure everybody now reflects on it as maybe a bullet dodged is too strong, but a lesson learned, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, there was a left side today of Zinchenko and Mudryk, and I was kind of thanking my lucky stars a little bit, because it didn't really function particularly well. So not
amazing result for Romania though, and some brilliant goals in that game.
It was. Zinchenko not particularly good on the third goal, it has to be said, from a defensive point of view. So yeah, that was it. That was the earlier game, but obviously the big game, I suppose, that we should talk about is England beating Serbia last night. I mean, what did you make of the performance? What did you make of the way England, I think, started pretty well and were quite good in the first half, but as the game went on, they got flatter and flatter, I think, is a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I thought they started well. I thought Bukayo Saka was part of that in a big way. I think he offered a lot of threat on the right-hand side and created the goal for Jude Bellingham. Big deflection on the cross, but nice run and good pass. I think it was from Kyle Walker to play him in. And it looked like he had his man on toast, to be honest, and was going to be a threat all through the game. But I'd agree with you. I think England really struggled to kind of control the game, particularly after about the half-hour mark. And I think they never looked especially uncomfortable. I think England are a pretty robust team defensively, and it's not like they gave away a ton of chances, but it wasn't a convincing, coherent performance in the manner of some of the performances we've seen already in the tournament. If you think of the way Germany played, or Spain, or I think even the Netherlands at points. We'll see what France are like tonight. Romania, even. There have been some pretty good team performances, and this wasn't really one of them across the 90 minutes. No,
it was maybe one of the least entertaining games of the tournament.
Yeah.
I suppose offset by the familiarity that we have with some of the players. I agree with you. I think Saka was very good in the first half. Bellingham was fantastic. He's just such a good player to watch. I really enjoyed the header. I did say this on our Euro Daily podcast. We can't call it Euro Daily. Sorry. Our
Our daily Euro.
Our daily
podcast.
Euro. The one we're doing every 24 hours or so about the Euros. And I was talking to Dan from HLTCO about the England performance. And I really loved the bravery of the Bellingham header, because that defender knew he wasn't going to get the ball. So, was concentrating on the man. But, the timing and the execution of that header was absolutely fantastic. I also thought Declan Rice was very important for England yesterday on a day where the performance, dwindled and the performance levels dwindled, and Serbia got back into the game without threatening too much. But Declan Rice, as we've seen all season for Arsenal, his ability just to be in the right place at the right time, to make an interception, to get your foot in, to make a pass. I don't think anybody made more passes for England than Declan Rice yesterday. Even in that second half, I think his presence was very important in an area of the pitch where obviously something experimental is going on from an England perspective. Oh, Lukaku just scored. So it's 1-1. There you go.
There we go. The gold still glistens.
It's slightly less rusty brass.
Yeah. I thought Rice was good. I think the fact that he had to play so well was kind of indicative of some of the sort of structural problems in the team, and particularly in that midfield area. And I'm not sure there's a kind of clear solution for England. He's obviously wedged Trent into a midfield role. It's not a position he knows especially well. I don't know if England will get away with that against better teams.
Do you think he's playing him there so that when England presumably face better teams, he is a little more accustomed to that role? Because, you could make a case for Conor Gallagher to start there as a more natural player in that position. I know there's been a lot of talk of Adam Wharton, but he is still very young and only, 6 months of Premier League football under his belt, which isn't to say he couldn't do a job in there. I think he absolutely could. He's a really, really good player. But it just strikes me that for somebody like Gareth Southgate, who is, would it be fair to say, risk averse?
Mm-hmm.
That, to take that risk must be part of a wider strategy or a wider thinking that they're not just going to play him there for the first couple of games. They want him in there for the games that they're going to play against better opposition.
Maybe. I have to be honest and say that would worry me a little bit. I mean, Conor Gallagher is the least sexy pick of the midfield picks, right? Because obviously Alexander-Arnold's got great quality on the ball. There's a lot of excitement about Kobbie Mainoo. I think even Adam Wharton, people are really getting behind his potential. I think Conor Gallagher is probably less technically able than a lot of those players, but he is absolutely full of running. He's a very good presser, and he's a decent ball winner. And my suspicion is that the most balanced England midfield three might well have him in it. And I think he might even get in by the latter stages of the tournament. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm curious about this Alexander-Arnold in midfield thing to see if it works. I mean,
So the Belgium goal has just been disallowed for the tiniest handball in the build-up, and they use this thing on the screen, like the way they have in cricket, to hear whether a ball has taken a nick off a bat.
Mm-hmm.
They had that on the screen, and the guy, they seemed to go as if that had been registered. Like it's a tiny, tiny touch on his hand, completely accidental.
Wow. That's
2 goals Belgium have had disallowed now, because Lukaku had one disallowed for offside as well.
That's going to be very controversial, I imagine. So that's the midfield, but nice to see Rice getting some plaudits, and rightly so. I mean, I thought actually the England player who came out of it with maybe most credit might have been Marc Guehi, who I thought did very well at the back. He's kind of my bet to be the sort of Owen Hargreaves of the tournament. I think I can foresee a scenario where he comes out of this tournament and lands himself a big move to a kind of a Champions League club. I know that was potentially in the offing anyway. But
he's a player Arsenal have been interested in, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I mean, Arsenal have liked him for a long time. And I don't think they're alone in that in the Premier League. I think a lot of other clubs do admire Guehi as well. I'm not sure it's the summer necessarily for Arsenal to go and get a centre-half who'll probably cost, if he plays every game for England in the Euros and performs at this level, it could genuinely double his price tag the way football works.
I mean, there are other clubs, aren't there? I'm not giving anybody any ideas, but, if you're Chelsea, for example, you might just do that thing and buy back the player you've sold because, he's actually really, really good. And Manchester United, for example, could do with a good centre-half. And I think the way he slotted into that Harry Maguire role with a kind of calmness and assurance on the ball was extremely promising. I thought he was really good, yeah.
I might be wrong, but I just feel like now he's in that England team, considering that centre-backs maybe not a position where we're particularly strong, I don't see him coming out. And I mean beyond the tournament as well. I think he could really nail down that berth. And I think it could be a big summer for him. So let's see. Yeah,
but, 1-0 win in the end. It's a win for England. And that will be the main thing. I think there is such analysis, and maybe I don't want to say over-analysis, but such in-depth analysis of everything England do, particularly given the scrutiny that Gareth Southgate is under. And I do understand it, don't get me wrong, but the players I don't think will be too worried about anything other than the fact they got the win.
No, and I'm long enough in the tooth to know that England winning group games, especially their opening group game, has never been a given. And
no.
I think it's good to get the points on the table and get off on the right foot. Hopefully, the team can unlock some of its potential, because when you see that starting 11, and you look at that front four of Saka, Bellingham, Foden, Kane, it's pretty potent.
I mean, it should be, but obviously Kane yesterday had an abysmal first half where I think he had 2 touches of the ball, but one of them was right before the break. So he'd gone basically 45 minutes with 1 touch of the ball. Phil Foden,
one with his feet, one with his head. I think, in the first half.
So I mean, what do you put that down to? Is it a case that the system has too many players playing in the areas that Kane wants to play? Should Kane change his, he has a tendency to drop deep as we know, but if there are other players in those areas of the pitch and those players are, for example, Jude Bellingham and Declan Rice, does Harry Kane need to drop in to try and get on the ball, or does he need to give England an outlet, which I think he definitely did at times, particularly in the second half. He needed to be that guy for them, and he wasn't. What's your reading of it? Why was Kane so just out of the game? Was it down to him? Was it down to the system? Was it down to the structure that England were playing? And is that obviously something Southgate is going to have to think about? And I don't know. I mean, if you're captain and a goal scorer like Harry Kane has got 1 touch of the ball in 45 minutes, something's not quite right, even if generally speaking you're playing okay.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of reduced even in the second half to just sort of trying to win free kicks for England. That was sort of his role. We're booting the ball into him and he would do what he does and go down. We've seen it a million times, and England would gain a bit of territory. But that was about it. I mean, he had 1 chance in the game, and it was a very good save, I thought, actually, to deny him with the header at the back post. But yeah, it's a curious one. You might be on something there. Him and Bellingham, I think, maybe want to operate in similar spaces at times. And, clearly this is kind of going to be Jude Bellingham's team moving forward. So after this tournament, I think whoever is in charge of England has a bit of an issue there potentially, because I think they do want to operate in similar areas.
Did you see Cesc Fabregas's punditry on BBC where he sort of disagreed with Micah Richards, who was basically saying it's very sad that Phil Foden didn't play well, and it's just very sad. And Cesc was like, well, he's got to impose himself on the game more. He's got to do more to get into the game. Whatever about being played. I mean, I don't think Phil Foden playing on the left is Phil Foden being played out of position per se. Clearly, he operates in different areas for Manchester City, but how do you look at his role in the team, and would England perhaps be better with somebody like Anthony Gordon on the left if Saka is starting on the right?
Maybe. I mean, I would have quite liked to see that change made. so that I could have a proper look at Gordon in that position. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one because, you can't have Foden and Bellingham really operating both as number 10s. I know some people will say, well, just play Jude Bellingham deeper next to Declan Rice. I think you take away too much of what Bellingham's good at. And I think he showed that on the goal yesterday. Foden is playing on the left, but only out of possession. When he's on the ball, when England are on the ball, he had quite a lot of freedom. And I thought Cesc punditry was really good, saying it's about the mentality. It's about being prepared to take responsibility, to seize the moment and impose yourself. And I think that is, to be frank, what Bellingham does so well. He has that kind of inherent gravitas where, it just feels like it's hard to describe, but he has that kind of air of destiny to him, and sure. I think Phil Foden needs to step up and try to match that. If he is to really, find his place in this England team, I don't doubt his talent for a second, but he looked a bit like a square peg in a round hole. Last night. It
is such an interesting discussion, though, isn't it? These players who play for managers whose teams are highly structured and highly organized, like Pep Guardiola, and you take them out of that environment, and it's a bit more difficult for them because people will say, well, he's got who's the little fucking Portuguese bin man? Bernardo Silva.
Bernardo Silva?
Yeah. He's got Bernardo Silva and he's got Kevin De Bruyne and he's got, Jack Grealish and he's got this guy and he's got that guy, but it's not as if in an England shirt he's surrounded by fucking nobodies. These are great players in an England shirt, particularly the ones who are playing close to him, like Rice, like Saka, like Kane, which is pains me to say it, Bellingham obviously as well, so there's no shortage of quality in the England setup that would be a reason why Foden can't produce decent form for his country, but he doesn't really seem to be able to. Slovakia have won, by the way, full time there.
Wow. Great result for them. Yeah, it's a curious one, and it's interesting, actually. I thought maybe there was an opportunity in this game for a bit more flexibility or rotation, particularly in that front three, front four. I know Saka's brilliant on the right, and he's always on the right for Arsenal, but I don't see why he couldn't swap over with Foden at points of time and play on the left. We've seen him be really effective doing that and driving to the byline when playing as a left back. So maybe it's about taking the reins off a little bit, but I think Foden had freedom. He moved around maybe more so than any other player in the team in terms of some of the positions he took up. But just his use of the ball wasn't great, and it was unusually untidy. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it's early days in the tournament, but I think having lost their final friendly to Iceland, maybe England were under a bit of pressure to kind of turn up and hit the ground running and show that was just a blip and there's nothing to worry about here.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could say, despite the 3 points, that this was a performance that did that.
No, I don't think so. But, it gives us, plenty to talk about, and, the press plenty to talk about as well. What else? Well, I mean, were you on Cesco watch yesterday?
No, I didn't see that game. So you'll have to fill me in. What are we missing out on, Andrew?
There were moments. He had one shot that went just wide, and he had one excellent shot which absolutely smashed back off the post. And you can see that there are raw ingredients there. But just, look, it's very difficult to make assessments on one game in an international tournament, and certainly the opening game for a player in an international tournament. He could, come to life and score a load of goals. And, if that shot that went off the post had gone in, I'm pretty sure everybody will be going, oh, God, we missed out so much. But I think what I took away from his performance was that the logic of him staying at Leipzig for, let's say, one more season anyway, seems solid to me. From his perspective, the raw ingredients are still quite raw, and maybe you get a better idea of a player at 21 years of age, another season, and Yeah, look, I think we'd all talked ourselves into the idea that it was, potentially going to happen. It now won't happen this summer, at least, anyway. But I did think, if you're in the nuts and bolts of a title race, a player who still has plenty to learn might not just be the guy who's going to get you over the line. I could be completely wrong. He could come to Arsenal and burst into life. But that was just my takeaway from that particular game yesterday and his performance. Things that you would say, okay, yeah, that's good, but still a way to go for him, I think.
Yeah, I think he's someone whose career's been managed pretty strategically. There have been comparisons to Erling Haaland in that respect. I don't think that's a comparison Cesco necessarily loves. He models himself more on Zlatan. I think that's his big idol.
Right.
But there are some similarities, and I think Haaland has always been very smart, and the people around him have been very smart in terms of choosing the right time to make the big move. And I think probably this would have been a year ahead of schedule for Benjamin Sesko. And yeah, I mean, I got myself excited about him like everybody else. Like I told you on air, I'd seen that Van Basten volley and thought, yeah, I'll have that Arsenal.
Yeah.
But who knows? We may eventually see him in an Arsenal shirt. I think Arsenal were the choice for him if he was going to go this summer. And I would imagine, there's a decent chance they'll be in the mix next summer too. But other people might be as well. And it might be a very different category of signing. I think what made it so appealing this year was obviously the release clause. But that's gone now in the new contract.
Is there a new release clause, do we know? Or is it?
No, we're not expecting there's to be any release clause in there. I think there's a sort of broad agreement between the player and Red Bull that if a good project presents itself to him next summer, that a deal will be done at a price everyone deems satisfactory. But frankly, that price could be 20, 30, 40 million above, what you would have paid this summer. If he has a storming season, and scores 25 goals, there's no way he's going to be available for the 65 million euros he would have been costing this year.
I mean, we had a question, by the way. William Saliba starts for France this evening.
Yeah, great news, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about this last week or the week before, didn't we? Where we were asked a question: would you prefer he sat on the bench or play? I think he should play. And he's in a team. You look at the team that he's in with Kylian Mbappe and N'Golo Kante starting, which is kind of mad, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't believe that.
Yeah, Antoine Griezmann. This is France are one of the favourites, and I think William Saliba being in the team for one of the favourites for a big European or international tournament, rather, I should say, it can only be good for him. Can only be good for his development as a player. You need to play on the biggest stage. If you are one of the best players in the world, or you're one of the best players in the Premier League, and I think he absolutely is, one of the best defenders, one of the best centre-halves in the Premier League, what good is it to him to sit on a bench and watch other people play? It's absolutely useless. I think, his quality demands his inclusion. As much as people might want him to sit on the bench, you can't on the one hand say Deschamps is a whatever for not picking him, and then also get upset when he actually realises that he's got to play this guy because he's so good.
Yeah, I think part of the joy of having truly world-class players at your club is getting to see them shine on the international stage, when the eyes of the continent are on them. And I hope he can tonight, because he's not had the easiest time in the France national team. He's not necessarily shown his best form to date. And this would be a terrific time to start doing that. I mean, France are probably the favourites, aren't they, for the tournament?
Certainly up there, yeah.
So to be at the heart of that team, with his very good friend Kylian Mbappe as well, up at the other end of the pitch, I think it'll be very special for him, and I'm pleased for him. Yeah,
it's just looking at the France bench as well. It's ridiculous. Camavinga on the bench.
I can't believe that about Kante. I mean, it shows that I'm not really across the French national team. But someone said to me yesterday, I was in a conversation and someone said, oh, France are favourites. And someone said, oh, who've they got? And someone said, oh, Mbappe, N'Golo Kante. And I nearly picked the guy up and was like, I don't think Kante's going to be a big player. He's playing in Saudi. But there you go. It shows what I know. Starting the first game.
He's still only 33.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not without precedent that a player, you know, in the September, October of their career can have a really good international tournament, and that kind of structure and quality that he brings to midfield could be really useful for France. So we'll see how they get on a bit later on against Austria. But just going back to Cesco, we had a question on the Discord from Nuno Tavares, who says, "Morning, gents. What does Cesco signing a new contract mean for our transfer plans? Does it mean abandoning signing a striker and focusing on other positions? Or do we know yet? Is there any whisper as to what direction what's the word that everyone uses when Arsenal pivot? We pivot to something else when we miss out on the thing that we're trying to get, and we've been lauded from pillar to post for our quality pivoting, but do we know in which direction Arsenal are going to pivot this time?"
Well, you know, we know bits and pieces. I mean, I think that Arsenal won't pivot to another number 9 in the same way as they have in certain other situations. You know, like, oh, we've missed out on Mudryk, let's go and buy Trossard. We haven't got Caicedo, let's get Jorginho. I don't think Arsenal will just go down a notch on their list and say, right, now we're going for this guy. I think that for them, Cesco was as much about the opportunity to acquire a player they've tracked for years and have a long-term interest in for what was a pretty fair fee in terms of market value. I think that having not landed him, I think they'll be looking at what they've got in the squad, and I think they'll want more clarity on some of those players before they go and get themselves another striker. You know, they do have Kai Havertz, Gabriel Jesus, who's posting his videos to social media of his summer training regime. Eddie Nketiah still in the squad. Leandro Trossard, very much an option at number 9. I think that they'll wait and see what happens with those guys. And it wouldn't blow my mind if we didn't end up signing a number 9. The messages that I was receiving after the Cesco renewal with Leipzig was that Arsenal's focus was more likely to be on strengthening the midfield at this point in time. When
you say the midfield, you know, that's not the front 3, right? That's behind, and it does. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but Fabio Vieira ? Emile Smith-Rowe ? There are currently Jorginho, Rice, and Thomas Partey in the squad who can all play 6. So is it possible that Arsenal might be looking for creativity in a different area?
Yeah, perhaps so. I mean, I think number 6 and number 8 are both on the table this summer, and it'll be about who's available. And I also think if Arsenal can find, you know, someone who really does add something to their attack, and be that through the middle or be out wide, I think they'll do that too. But I don't get the sense there's anything imminent. And I think we are still pretty early in the window. I think the Cesco case was maybe a bit unusual because he wanted clarity before the Euros, and the clubs following him, including Arsenal, also wanted clarity before the Euros. Now that there is clarity on that, I think back to the drawing board would be too, you know, that makes it sound too problematic. I don't think that's quite the case, but I think there's a long way to go, and Arsenal probably want to see how things play out a little bit in terms of the players they've already got on the books. I actually think that's a really big consideration this summer, and I'm not even certain that it's from a financial perspective. You know, I'm not sure Arsenal have a pressing need to sell players to meet PRS regulations or anything like that. But I think there is a kind of internal pressure and internal expectation that we start to perform better on sales. So I think there's quite a lot of focus on that at this point in time.
So probably stuff being cooked up at the moment. Yeah. They're putting the ingredients out, and they're getting ready to throw it all together.
What do you think though? Like, what's your instinct? Do you think Arsenal will end up signing a number 9 this summer?
I don't think it'll be a number 9. No, I think the Cesco was perhaps an opportunity that was there. And we actually had a question about this. You've just sort of reminded me of it. It's from Max, who's at Asna_Maz on Twitter, and he says, are people too complacent about the quality of our forwards? It's unlikely that Trossard scores 13 non-penalty league goals again. Big questions about Jesus post-injury. While I believe Martinelli will recover his level, it's no certainty. For me, this is as big a need as midfield. If Reece Nelson is going to go, and there was a story obviously from David Ornstein that Arsenal were, he had told Arsenal he wants to go, right? Or would be open to going.
Probably would have been all right about that.
Yeah, exactly. And Arsenal want 20 million, and very best of luck if they can get 20 million for Reece Nelson. Brilliant. That's amazing work. But I do think I would feel a bit more comfortable going into next season, a season where perhaps we're going to have to be even better than we were this season, if we did have another option up front or for that front three. Because if Reece Nelson goes, if Eddie Nketiah goes, if Emile Smith-Rowe goes, I know he's not somebody who played a lot, I think you need to replace some of that with another forward player. So I completely understand the focus on midfield. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if midfield was much more of an 8 than a 6 at this point. I sort of fluctuate between that because much depends on what happens with Partey, I suppose, and whether he goes or doesn't go. But if Smith-Rowe goes, then you're going to need some creativity in there. And if Nelson and Nketiah go, I think you need another forward. But I don't think it'll be a 9. I think it might be a wide player.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, when Arsenal went out of the Champions League, there was a sense, I think, from the decision makers at the club that they just lacked a little spark in attack. And I think they know that's something they need to rectify. I think if as you outlined, if they let Nelson and Nketiah go, I think that necessitates bringing somebody in. Maybe it'll be somebody who can play wide or can operate through the middle, who's versatile in the same vein as a Trossard or a Martinelli. We shall see, but I think they'll add something to that front three mix. But whether it's at the level of a Cesco signing in terms of the fee, and I don't know. I'm not sure at this point in time.
Yeah. I mean, there's just not much going on. Certainly publicly, I'm sure things are going on behind the scenes, but there's radio silence is not quite the right way to put it, but there's not much happening in terms of rumor. And that's not uncommon in a tournament summer, I would say as well. I do think, speaking to people, that I have the sense the market is only just starting to pick up. And I think once we get into July, partly for accounting reasons, we'll see a lot more business starting to happen. But I do think it is still very, very early. And I would say, look at our rivals. I don't see a great deal of transfer activity happening anywhere. No, not yet. Let me ask you this one. This is a question just to take us into the break. We'll do some more questions in part two. Maybe we've answered this before, but perhaps on a Patreon pod. But Freddie LJ says, what is your personal standout international tournament? For me, Italian 90 stands out. I'm just wondering, is it your first tournament that captures your imagination?
Great question. I mean, I think Italia 90 was pretty formative in the minds of a lot of young football fans. I was too young. I was 4.
Right.
So I don't really have any recollections of that. I think Euro 96, I was 10 years old. I went to a number of games, actually. The games obviously were in England, and I went to the opening game, which was England beat Switzerland 1-0. I think it was an Alan Shearer penalty. I was at the Karol Poborski game where he scored the ludicrous chip. that got him the move to Manchester United. I think it's hard to look past that. And I know obviously sort of the trauma of England's exit and Gareth Southgate, the penalties, him returning as manager now.
Yeah.
You know, that's a pretty... I think for my generation, Southgate is kind of, you know, the England personality of our lives.
There was a lot going on in that tournament as well, wasn't there? Because there was the England played Scotland.
Yeah,
that was the Gascoigne goal and the
chair.
dentist chair and all that stuff.
I mean, having Scotland in a group stage, you know, that in itself was quite dramatic and exciting. David Seaman was a hero in that tournament, which was incredibly exciting to me as a young Arsenal fan. He saved a couple of penalties.
Against Spain,
against Spain, and he saved from Gary McAllister in normal time against Scotland. Brilliant save. And so you know, England battered Holland, I think 4-1 in that tournament, and you know, maybe should have gone on and won it, and were very close to doing so, but knocked out the semi-finals against Germany. I've had some other great World Cups. You know, I was in South Africa in 2010. I was in Brazil in 2014. But I suppose, the formative one for me was 96. What about you?
I mean, I think, not that it was formative, but Italian 90 is one which really sticks out because Ireland were in it. It was...
was that Jack Charlton's Ireland?
Yes. And literally the nation was at a standstill for every game. I was doing my final exams from school, my leaving cert, when the World Cup was on, and I can remember going from my school after one of the exams, going to my uncle's house, which was slightly nearer than my own house, and I think, you know, family were meeting there to watch Ireland against Romania. And I think I got there at some point, like late in the second half. And then, of course, it went to penalties and David O'Leary scored that penalty. And it was huge. But walking from the school to my uncle's house, it was like, what's that movie with Cillian Murphy? 28 Days Later. Honestly, there was nobody. Nobody was anywhere. Everybody was watching the football, and I think that one sort of stands out. Mexico '86 was another brilliant one as well because the games were on late. I would have been about 15, 86, so about 15 that summer. So you're at that age where, you know, you can't be told to go to bed. Like you could be when you were younger. So just staying up all night or staying up really late at night watching games from Mexico because of the time difference was a really brilliant one as well. So yeah, those two I think were the ones that stand out. They get a bit blurry then after that, you know.
I will say, in terms of the quality of the games, the excitement, the number of goals, this tournament has had a really strong start.
Yes, I agree. It's been good fun so far.
Yeah, and a couple of upsets today as well, which always helps. So
it's slightly less jeopardatious. That's not a word, is it? There's not enough jeopardy when you've got three teams coming out of the group, you know.
I know.
So I mean, this could have been like really bad for Belgium. It's just kind of slightly inconvenient if they can get their shit together, you know.
Yeah.
So it does take away a little from the excitement, but I agree. So far, so good with Euro 2024. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, why don't we take a little break here? We'll come back with some of your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer questions that you sent to us on Twitter at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog. Also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. James, I think we need to just take a moment and reflect and pay our condolences to the family and friends of Kevin Campbell, who passed away over the weekend, just 54 years of age. Incredibly sad. I've read and listened to so many people talk about him as a player and as a person and what a great guy he was, and the outpouring and the sort of overwhelming positivity that has come from everywhere. I think it tells you just so much about him and what kind of a man he was. Yeah,
really sad. And, you know, how old was he? 54? Mm-hmm. It's no age, really. But incredibly well-liked, incredibly popular at so many football clubs, you know, loved at Arsenal, adored at Everton, and really, really, really cherished at Nottingham Forest as well. I think even West Brom and Cardiff fans have a special place in their heart for him. And yeah, such sad news. It's really gutted to hear that. I didn't know Kevin personally, but I remember him as a player. I remember him, to be honest, more so at Nottingham Forest and Everton than I do at Arsenal.
Yeah.
But I always thought he was a fantastic footballer. And I remember in the 90s him going and playing in Turkey, which felt incredibly exotic at the time.
Yeah.
For an Englishman and an Arsenal Academy product to be playing for Trabzonspor was quite unusual. And I guess he was sort of something we all dream about, really, which is a homegrown academy striker who comes through, scores goals for your first team and wins trophies.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get too many of those.
No. And he played a big role in some of the trophies that Arsenal won during his time at the club. He scored a goal in the semi-final to put us through in 1994 against PSG. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know him personally, but I'd been on podcasts with him a few times.
Yeah.
I think a lot of players, you know, they go into the media, they go into punditry, and you do get some sense of what they're like, you know, by the way they talk about the game, by the way they interact. But I think in for want of a better term, mainstream media, right, there is a sort of level of professionalism that is required for the job that doesn't necessarily allow you to truly get to know the person. There are very, very few people, I think, who via their work on television, you really get to know well or get a true sense of who they are. Maybe Ian Wright is one of them, but that's kind of rare. With Kevin Campbell, I think we were fortunate that he was an extremely gracious and willing podcaster. I think he just loved talking about football. He was willing to, I saw Tom Canton, I saw Harry Symeou talk about, you know, how good he was with them when they were doing their podcasts. I know that Sophie Nicolau, who runs the Highbury Squad podcast, who was, you know, obviously very close to Kevin. I think what she did in sort of giving him a platform on a regular podcast allowed so many more people who had never seen Kevin Campbell as an Arsenal player for, you know, various reasons, whether they're a fan the other side of the world, their age may preclude that people got to know really who he was and what kind of a nice guy he was. And like I said, I never met him in person, but I can remember the first time I jumped on the podcast. And you know, when you do these things, there's a sort of like a backstage, in inverted commas, backstage area where you're waiting for the stream to start and, you know, all that.
Before you go live.
Before you go live, exactly. And look, I'm sure this is the same for you. I've been doing this for a long time, doing Arseblog a long time. But when you do anything with somebody who has represented Arsenal Football Club, it's hard to sort of lose the fan in yourself, right? You get a bit nervous, you get a bit starstruck. You know, this is Kevin Campbell. This is, you know, a guy who played 200 odd games for Arsenal. I watched him, and you know, you can't help but be a little nervous. And I always remember the first time I went on, he sort of greeted me like we were old friends and welcomed me in and sort of put me at ease for the conversation that we were about to have, and spend an hour chatting to him and chatting to Sophie. And he really was just a wonderfully nice guy, and I'm sure he will be very, very sadly missed by all his friends and all his family, and you know, wider to that, all the people who enjoyed watching him and listening to him, whether it was on the radio, whether it was on a podcast, whether it was on YouTube, that community of people who knew him from that are going to miss him dreadfully as well.
Well, how many ex-players, truly become part of that fan community? Not too many. And he did, and he did lovingly, and I think that's fantastic, and sort of leveled the playing field a little bit. And I just think what an incredibly positive presence he was.
Yes.
Even if you just followed him on Twitter, and you'd see his kind of daily morning missives urging you to have a good day and, have a good Dickie Bow Thursday, whatever it might be. I just thought how great to have a public presence that's always trying to put a smile on people's faces and send a positive message. And I think we can all take something from that. But thoughts with his family and really, really sad news, and his friends, of course. Of
course. And, I had a call on Saturday evening. I was walking into town. I had a call from Liam Brady, who doesn't do social media, who doesn't do any of that stuff, and just wanted to put it out there about how sad he was to hear about Kevin's passing, and, how much he just loved the guy he was, and what a nice guy he was, and what a good footballer he was, and I didn't quite know how to impart that message, and I'm just sort of saying it out loud here, so it's out there. But yes, condolences to all of Kevin's family and friends. It's very sad news, but he will be remembered extremely fondly by not just Arsenal fans, as you say, not just fans of the clubs that he played for, but I think the wider football community. You could see that on Twitter over the weekend, couldn't you? It didn't matter if he didn't have a connection with your club.
True.
He was just somebody that people loved to listen to and hear talk about football. So may he rest in peace.
Well, from that very sad news, what about this? Do you consider this better news, Andrew? This is from JMark91, who says, "Morning, gents. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much did you enjoy seeing Erik ten Hag being given the second chance at United that he clearly deserves?"
Well, I didn't enjoy it so much that I did a whole podcast about it, but but that's not my bag anyway. I leave that to the experts. I have to say it has been pretty funny, hasn't it? Because all the stories, and look, the stories that came out after the FA Cup, or just before the FA Cup final actually, about how Manchester United had decided to sack him were well sourced, it seems, because what we've heard since is that was what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And United talked to this guy and that guy and Thomas Tuchel and whoever, fucking Phil Brown, the whole lot of them. They talked to every manager they could find and then decided, that quote from him yesterday. Yes, I know they talked to lots of other managers, but they decided they already had the best manager. I mean, come on, man. What the fuck? Yeah. I mean, I understand him wanting to keep his job, and I actually think, there are some mitigating factors to the season that Manchester United had. They did have bad injuries.
Terrible injuries, yeah.
They had key players out for quite a long time.
They had a bad manager.
They had a bad manager. They had Anthony. All of these things were part and parcel of it. So it's quite possible that they could do better next season. But I have to say, the sort of personality vacuum that is Erik ten Hag, I'd rather he was there than they went out and got somebody really good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And I've seen plenty of United fans who seem quite content with this news. It's sort of part of the culture of Man U. They don't relish sacking managers, I would say, as a fan base. And I think they have had such grievances with the ownership there for such a long time that it's kind of granted managers a bit of immunity. But I was there was one aspect of the sort of breaking news that I was shocked by, and that was the new contract. I could understand going and trying to get Thomas Tuchel, and he says he wants a break and it's not going to happen. And I can understand sticking with the man who's, in the dugout for now, but giving him a new deal. I mean, is that pure PR? Is that just to say, no, he is our guy, honest? That's the only justification I can find for a new contract.
I think so. It's about the public-facing message that it sends, right? That we are backing this guy and we're prepared to back him with a new contract. It might also, in some way, speak to a dearth of quality in the managerial market. Mm-hmm. That they did go out. They were prepared to sack him. They were prepared to bring in a new manager. We saw it with Bayern Munich. Nobody wanted the Bayern Munich job. No. Or, the candidates, at least that they approached, didn't want it. Bayern Munich tried to do the same thing with Tuchel, didn't they? Like, let's go our separate ways. And then after interviewing about 10 people and everyone going, no, they were like, do you want to stay? And he was like, no. And then they get Vincent Kompany, who just got relegated with Burnley. This Bayern Munich. If Bayern Munich can't find a manager, and Manchester United can't find a manager, like they literally couldn't find anyone to take the job who they think is better than Erik ten Hag, it probably says something about the state of play in the marketplace, if you want to call it a marketplace. That what's out there. I mean, Chelsea just got a manager from the Championship.
Absolutely. And I know he did okay at Leicester and brought them up, but that's an appointment that would have been unthinkable a few years ago. And, again, United and Chelsea looked at McKenna, didn't they? Well, he did brilliantly with Ipswich, is coming up from the Championship. I do think it is slim pickings on the managerial market, and that probably makes those impending contract talks with Mikel Arteta more important.
What about this? The fixtures are out tomorrow, and Icon X, who's at Football Icon X on Twitter, says, with it being fixtures day tomorrow, would you rather a kinder schedule to begin the season and set a marker, or get some tough away games out of the way with easier fixtures? He has easier in inverted commas, by the way, to finish. It feels like the last few seasons we've had tough run-ins. And on the Discord, X-Pavan says, PL fixtures tomorrow. First 3 away games. Who would you like to play?
Good questions. I mean, we had a really tough run in this year. We pretty much aced it. I mean, I know people point at Aston Villa, but our points return from those games was absolutely brilliant. And we could well have gone unbeaten and picked up less points. You know what I mean? By drawing a few games. We won all but one. That said, I think actually the period I'll be looking at most closely is kind of November, December time.
Right.
Partly because this season, I think that's where some of our most painful points were dropped. And I think that's when you kind of feel the fatigue most strongly, and it's not the running. So you don't have that kind of propelling you forward. I think between what the way this league is playing out year on year is telling us is that between March and May, you've got to be in form anyway, right? Like if you want to win the league, you've got to finish strong. But I think that first half of the season is almost its own entity. And I think by the time the Champions League's kicked off, by the time the domestic cups are underway, there's a lot of congestion. And I think when you get to December, there's a lot of tired legs.
Yeah.
And I think it would be really beneficial to just have nice, comfortable fixtures, no tricky away trips around that period of time, because I think that's when I think we'll be most vulnerable.
Right. Okay.
What was the other question? First 3 away trips.
First 3 away games. I mean, I've got mine if you want to hear them.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right. Villa.
Okay.
Revenge.
Sure.
I want revenge. Spurs. Stick it to those fuckers early on.
And get it out of the way. It's a horrible place to go.
Horrible place to go. Just get the 3 points. Come back to civilization. And then Ipswich.
Just for something a bit different?
Yeah. I've got no real reason as to why Ipswich. I just looked at the Premier League table and went, Ipswich. So there you go.
Yeah, that sounds a bit tough to me, I think.
They're all tough. You gotta beat these teams whenever you play them.
You're right. I mean, that is the long and the short of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're going to have to beat them all eventually. But yeah, it's always an interesting day when the fixtures come out, or at least the initial drafting of the fixtures. The TV companies will play merry hell with it, of course. But yeah, we'll get a notion of what the season will look like.
An idea, yeah. It's going to be fascinating to see, and it makes it real again, doesn't it? Slightly, like we've switched off, and I know we're distracted by the Euros, but as soon as you see the fixtures, you start looking, and then people will, the dates of Champions League games, and we'll get something like Arsenal are away from home after every Champions League game they play this season, and everyone will freak out, and then it won't be as bad as we think, because we're gonna be fine.
Yeah, hopefully so. What about this? Snoona Gunner. Goodly morning, gents. Out of the games in the Euros so far, which player do you hope Arteta and Edu are reading the 180-page dossier about, for better or worse?
Oh.
Is there anyone who's stood out to you on an individual level so far?
Not really, because I haven't been that inclined to dive into the international tournament thing where you go, oh, that guy was good, we should sign him. It's sort of like a running joke in the Discord at the moment. Anytime anyone does anything, it's like, oh, we should sign that guy.
Yeah. I
don't think there's been anybody particularly. I mean, look, as we talked about at the start of this, I had a look at Onana and was, no, definitely not. I'm glad to hear, you have assured us all 100%.
Did I 100% guarantee?
I think you 100% guaranteed there's no way that deal is going to happen.
I offered my resignation.
Your reputation is on the line for this one. So it might be about players that you think, oh, no. I mean, look, you could say something really, really obvious like Jude Bellingham, but that's, it's just nonsense. He's got an 890 million euro release clause. Is that what it is? Something like that.
Yeah, but if we sell Reece Nelson...
and we take the money that we got for Reece Nelson and we buy a load of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has one of those spikes, and then we sell the Bitcoin and we invest everything that we've got in some kind of new crypto thing that's bound to take off. We might just be able to pay 10% of the release clause for Jude Bellingham.
Exactly. No, I mean, listen, mine is painfully obvious. I would say it's almost as obvious as Bellingham. But I watched the opening game, a Germany game, and I thought Musiala was absolutely brilliant.
Ooh, yeah.
I think he could be the player of the tournament, to be honest. Germany were impressive. They were as good as Scotland were bad.
True.
And, I look at that team. Obviously, they've got Arkai up top, but Musiala, Florian Wirtz, there's some good players in that side.
There are, yeah.
I don't think there's any realistic chance of Bayern letting him go anytime soon. But if I could cherry pick somebody, it'd probably be him.
What if he doesn't like Craig Bellamy? What if Jamal Musiala just has a big falling out with Craig Bellamy because, he did something wrong in training and Craig Bellamy fucking hit him in the back with a 5-iron.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, no, I'm not having this. You can't do that to me. I need to leave. Is that how the move to Arsenal comes about?
Listen, I think that's the most plausible way. That's all I can say on that.
Okay. Shakalaka on the Discord said, I know this is a long shot and I haven't seen any connections at all, but should Arsenal be looking at Anthony Gordon? Young, English, plays on both flanks, had a good season last season. Newcastle need to sell. We know they don't want to sell Alexander Isak and, this the Bruno Guimaraes thing going on. I mean, is that how you test their PSR mettle?
I don't think I just don't think they'd let him go. I think I think they'll find a way out of their PSR mess, and I suspect it will involve Bruno Guimaraes in some way or other. I like Anthony Gordon, and my eyebrows were raised when Newcastle paid a lot of money to sign him. I think it was 45 million they paid in January 2023, so only 18 months ago. I think they'd be looking to make, a decent profit on that. I don't think he is the guy, but I understand the question, because what is his most obvious trait? And the answer is pace.
Winning penalties and being really annoying.
Falling over at the right time.
Yeah.
No, he's quick. He's quick and he can play off either flank. And I think we could do with a player like that, couldn't we?
There you go. I mean, you're making a case for it. He's young enough. He's English. He's got Premier League experience. We know how much Mikel Arteta likes his players and his signings to have some Premier League experience.
I just think if they were drawing up a list of their most important players, I think he might come in number 2 behind Isak. They really like him. So I think what it would cost to sign him, I don't think he's worth it. I think there's probably someone else out there who we could get for less money, who is also fast and good at falling over.
But if we sell Reece Nelson,
then a world of possibility opens up. I don't know. What do you think of Gordon?
He annoys the fucking shit out of me, to be honest.
Yeah.
But there's a player there. I think there's a good player there.
For sure.
How old is he?
23.
23, okay. Yeah. I mean, I think...
There are some things about him that fit. He's quite an interesting bloke, actually. He did an interview with The Overlap, who don't sponsor this podcast, so we must stop plugging them.
Are you sure? Are you like sitting there with a fucking back pocket full of Gary Neville's fivers? Just do it again, James. Just mention my podcast again.
No comment. But I watched the Vieira one, by the way, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's good.
It made me think, actually, that he was asked about what's his sort of biggest learning from his managerial career. And he said to think about the people employing me and that I'm going to be working directly for rather than the club or the badge. And I think that might explain that sort of the emergence of that thinking among managers might explain the difficulty that some of these big clubs are having landing their targets.
Maybe so, yeah.
Anyhow, they did an interview with Anthony Gordon in which he spoke about his preparation, and he came across as incredibly professional, incredibly detail-oriented. I think we are talking ourselves into it, aren't we?
Well, look, I'm not. I understand the question as well. That, there is a need for a wide player. I think if we're not going to bring a 9 in, it's going to be a wide player, and you do need somebody with pace. He's certainly got pace. But yeah, it'd be another one of those, wouldn't it, where you're making a signing that's probably going to have to win over the fans a bit because he's been irritating down the years. But there you go. I think it's your question. Have you got one more, and we'll do one more each quickly and then get out of here and enjoy William Saliba's masterclass for France? Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. I hope we're not delivering him an almighty jinx, but there you go. Let's go for this one. Dominic Preston, I need help.
Okay.
Last night, I dreamt I walked past a burning house from which Ben White himself handed me a kitten he'd rescued. Later in the dream, I passed another house and saw Ben again, who asked me to adopt a beagle puppy named Burger King. What does it all mean?
It means that there is a dog or a cat out there in the universe right now that needs you. What's his name? Dominic Preston. Dominic Preston. I think what's happening here is that the power of Ben White and the positivity that Ben White is putting into the universe is being transmitted into your brain via sleep. And there's a local animal shelter that requires you to go down there. And maybe it'll be a beagle puppy, maybe it'll be some kind of terrier, maybe it'll be a mongrel who's just as lovable as any other dog, or maybe there might be a kitten somewhere that needs you. There's no other explanation for this, I don't think, other than there is an animal that's got to come into your life, Dominic Preston, and will bring you happiness and joy and love the way that cats and dogs do for so many of us.
And must regardless of species or gender, be named Burger King.
Burger King. Yeah. Imagine being in the park. What's your dog's name? Burger King.
Or just shouting it.
Yeah.
Burger King!
Get over here, you whopper! There was a dog in my local park who was called Mega Dog. He was a little...
There wasn't, and
I swear to God, his name was Mega Dog, and they used to push him around in a kind of pram because he got old. He honestly, what can I tell you? Mega Dog is no more, I don't think. So maybe, Dominic, you are looking for your very own Mega Dog. I don't have a question to top that.
That's one of the best names for a dog I've ever heard.
Yeah. I had another mate who had a dog, but it was just called John.
Yeah, I respect that. Yeah. Just like a sensible name.
Yeah,
for a dog.
Dog with human names. Dog in the front seat of a car, wearing a T-shirt. My name is John. I
have actually got something we could do to finish off.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Of course not.
Well, I think we failed to do it last week, but Critical T submitted their player ratings game.
Let's do it.
This is from the 10th of June. Yeah, this is right. Okay, this is the right one. So it'll be the usual format. I will give you a player rating that you have written.
Yes.
And you will fail to remember it.
More than likely.
Okay. Rating number 1. 8 out of 10. His glistening, walnut-tinted thighs powered up and down the touchline to tremendous effect.
I mean, that can only be Ben White. I have no clue what game it was because it could have been any game in the second half of the season. I'm going to go for the second half of the season.
You've got that right. It was West Ham away.
Okay.
6-0 hammering
Perfect.
of the Hammers.
Okay.
And yes, it could only be Ben White. We started with an easy one.
Okay.
Rating number 2, 6.5. The 19-year-old had a quiet but tidy debut. And what a great moment for him. Congratulations.
Marquinhos?
That's a great shout. That's wrong.
Oh. What 19-year-old had a debut? Oh.
I'll give you a clue. This is from last season.
Last season. God, I can't remember that far back. No idea.
I'll give you a clue.
Was it in the League
after
Cup?
His father?
Dad?
Yes, it was Dad.
Dad, no. I love him. He's such a good talent. Is it Charles Sego Jr.?
Yes.
Right.
Because presumably he's named after Charles Sego Sr.
I guess so.
And the game was?
It was the League Cup game against Brentford.
Yeah. And as we know, that was just the start of what was to come from Charles Sego Jr. last season. Set him on the path to glory. Okay.
Right.
Rating number 3. 6. The 6s are tough, right? Because it's like...
Yeah, it's just average.
It's an average.
It doesn't stand out.
Grew into the game and found his passing range, but that opening 20 minutes was worryingly shaky. I'm going to go Aaron Ramsdale, maybe?
Yeah, could be.
Brentford away in the league.
Okay.
That's my guess. Have you got any advance on that?
Grew into the game with the opening 20 minutes.
Opening 20 minutes that was worryingly shaky.
I mean, I have Kivior in my head a little bit, but I can't remember a specific performance exactly like that. So,
okay,
yeah, let's go for it and see. I think you might be right.
I'm wrong, Andrew. And how wrong am I? The answer is, congratulations if you got it at home, David Raya.
David Raya, okay. Manchester, well, I mean, you were in the right ballpark. You were in the right ballpark.
Yeah, it sounded like a keeper to me, but
yeah.
There you go. How things change around. That was David Raya in the Man City game.
That's true as well. When you think back to those opening 20 minutes.
Oh, man.
Oof.
That was scary times.
And we won the game. So, all's well that ends well.
What we're worried about.
Are these all from last season then?
So far, they have been.
Okay.
Oh, they all are. Yeah. They all. The next two are as well.
Okay.
I didn't read his full post. They're all from last season. 8.5. And then it says, redacted player song lyric. Involved in the goals and that pass for Martinelli that he disguised as a clearance. Chef's kiss.
Oh. I was thinking Kai Havertz.
Involved in the goals and a pass for Martinelli that he disguised as a clearance.
Just who hoofed it?
I mean,
Declan Rice?
did he boot one up the field?
I can't remember.
But what would the redacted song lyric be?
Rice, baby? I don't know.
Or something about him being cheap. I think it might be Tomiyasu because...
But does he have a song?
No, but wasn't he involved? Well, Super Tom.
Yeah, I know, but
I'm thinking of the goal, the Man City goal, where he was involved in it.
No, but that was actually quite a good move. That was like Tomiyasu nodded it down to Martinelli, didn't he? All of a sudden, Tomiyasu's in the box. And it was nodded down, so I don't think it was a clearance. I think
an 8.5.
I'm going to stick with Declan Rice because it's just in my brain somewhere.
Okay, Declan Rice. Well. The answer is Takahiro Tomiyasu.
No,
but it's a fluke because the game in question is the 6-0 Champions League victory over Lens. That is a goal I do not remember.
That's a game I don't remember. Never mind a goal. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. I watched that game with Brendan Hunt, a.k.a. Coach Beard from Ted Lasso.
Right.
We had a few drinks before.
So
that's my excuse.
That's not very good coaching for this particular scenario.
No, I know.
Okay.
Well, there you go. Some sort of clearance that became an assist. The final one, 8.5. He was heavily involved. The final action just wasn't there. But his movement caused redacted opposition problems all day, including the red card they got.
Okay, say
plus
that.
Plus his shot led to Saka's goal.
Just read that one out again, because...
Yeah, there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
He was 8.5 out of 10. He was heavily involved. The final action just wasn't there, but his movement caused the opposition problems all day, including the red card they got. Plus his shot led to Saka's goal. That's a long player rating by your standards.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Kai Havertz.
Yeah, it feels like first half of the season Kai Havertz, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It is Kai Havertz. His shot led to Saka's goal. Any ideas? A red card for the opposition?
No.
It was Liverpool 3, Arsenal 1. So that's actually the second half of the season.
They got a red card.
They got a... Andrew, honestly, it's like it never happens to me.
Who got sent off?
I don't know. Who's Charles Sacco Jr.? I don't know who any of these people are. No idea what happened in that game. Let's have a look, because I know you all know at home, but we're old. I turned 38 yesterday. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, happy birthday. Oh, Konate was sent off.
Konate was sent off. And now he's been dropped from the France team for William Saliba.
Well, that's what you get. That's what you get.
Right. Well, can we go and watch our boy?
Yeah, let's
Big
go
Willie?
and watch him. Belated birthday greetings to you.
Thank you very much.
I apologise, I forgot completely about it. I did have it written down somewhere. But
don't worry.
Forgot to send a text.
I still went ahead with the birthday.
Okay, that's good.
I decided to proceed. About 2 p.m, I turned to Camille and said, well, I guess there'll be no message this year. But we shall plough on.
Regardless.
No, we sat solemnly. I blew out my cake, licked myself. Was solitary tear rolling down my cheek.
Just makes
the grim procession of birthday celebrations.
Just makes the salted caramel icing a little more salty. That's all.
Indeed. Indeed.
All right. Okay, let's go watch France. To you guys, thanks so much as always for being with us. Remember, you can keep up with the Euros over on Patreon. We're doing podcasts pretty much every day. So if you fancy getting on board with that, you can join up at patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, take it easy and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.